Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Tang. I don't know if you know the story of Achilles. It's a great story if you haven't, and I highly recommend you go look it up. It's comes right out of Greek mythology. He's a mighty warrior, and his mom very proficiently took the time to protect her son. She dipped him in the river Styx, and she made him invulnerable to any weapon of war. Except there was one small problem. She held him by the heel, and that part didn't get covered, and that part didn't get protected. And when we talk about Achilles' heel, we're talking about that part, that weak spot that ultimately led to his demise. And when I think about the digital transformation of industries, I'm thinking about those weak spots, those points, those gaps, if you will, where all of these massive investments, all these incredible efforts that are currently taking place could potentially get undermined. And so, as we kind of dig into this a little bit, a couple of things that I'd offer to you. As I was preparing for this message, it struck me, I have been to over 100 different conferences on digital transformation. And as I sit through these conferences, it's a real treat when I hear something that I haven't heard before. And so my goal and my objective today, I hope, is to offer you something that you haven't heard before. When we think about the weak spots in digital transformations, ironically, it doesn't really start with technology. When we think about it, it's about people. And you've heard a lot of conversations about the people factor and those kind of things. I'd like to talk about the fact that we live in a society where there's just an incredible escalation of customer need, of customer demands, of customer expectation. I was at one conference where they said, the customer has never been so unreasonable, and the customer will never be as reasonable as they are today. And the question that we have is, that consumer who's been fed a healthy diet of Amazon purchases, Uber, Lyft rides, and Google searches, they very well are entitled to feel that they sit in the center of the universe. And the problem is that so many of the digital transformation initiatives that we talk about at conferences like this, I don't think do an adequate job of speaking to that escalating customer need. I mean, there are lots of discussions about trials, pilots here, a branch remodel, an ITM test here, a mobile app deployment there. But we're talking about an Amazonian, Apple, Uberized customer with escalated levels of expectations. How do we meet their needs? And we're dealing in an industry where the customer would rather go to their dentist than go to the bank. So how much longer can this continue? How do we fill that gap? I have a hypothesis that I'd like to propose to you. When it comes to digital transformation, I believe that the banking industry is in a much stronger position than any other industry out there in order to meet this need. And why do I believe that? I believe that because your customer is in pain. Your customer knows they don't know what they're doing with their money. They struggle with this outrageous college debt. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they need help. They know they need help. And it's in these moments where there is that opportunity to engage. Now, the problem here is, though, and one of the things that's another gap that I continually see after going to so many of these conferences, is one of the things I don't understand, and I ask so many people, why is it that the banking industry hasn't embraced this role as the trusted financial advisor? Your customers already trust you with their entire life savings. Why isn't it that the banking industry as a whole hasn't started telling the customers how to do this? And I asked people after people after people, and last year I finally had one banker said, we did a survey. We asked all of our employees, how much debt do you carry? What is your mortgage? What is your load? What is your paycheck? And how are you handling your money? And we were shocked to find out our employees aren't handling their own personal finances correctly. They're not qualified to give anybody advices. We don't want them giving people advices. And so there's that shocking gap here where banks are trusted. You are the trusted role of the advisors, yet the employees at us as a whole, I'm sure there's always the subject matter experts that break the rule, but as a whole, aren't prepared to embrace this new role. You know, when we talk about digital transformation employees, inevitably the conversation goes either one of two directions. It's either A, we need to take care of the employee who is not comfortable with digital technologies and needs some help to maybe find another role or potentially find some other place where they can potentially thrive. Or we talk about saying, hey, we need to hire a different kind of employee. We need to hire the ex-Ritz-Carlton, the ex-Disney employee, or the ex-bartender, because those people know how to take care of customers. I don't know that in this day and age of such a tight labor market that either one of those approaches actually really makes sense or is really kind of functional. You know, when you think about it, if an employee isn't interested in participating in the digital transformation of their job, the most important question isn't how can I find a role for them to thrive and succeed at. The more important question is, again, how am I going to meet an escalating, unreasonable customer expectation? How do I still succeed in that with an employee base that doesn't want to do this? The challenge with the ex-Ritz-Carlton and the ex-Disney, quite frankly, is just there's not enough of them out there. And we live in a customer experience-dominated society. Those guys, the ex-Ritz-Carlton and the Disney and the bartenders, they are worth their weight in gold. And everybody knows that. And it's not just bankers looking for them, it's the restaurant guys, the retail guys, anybody with a customer experience that's fighting for the same very limited pool of customers. And so my question then is, so what gives? Is this really a practical strategy, and can you really outfit your entire estate, your entire network of branches with this caliber of employees? I don't think that's a reasonable approach, and I don't think that's a strategy for success. Instead, I think we're going to have to think about how do we unlock that brand ambassador in our mainstream base of employees. We're talking about kind of a Maslow hierarchy of need. We want that self-actualized employee, the employee who wants to be there, not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to do that. But there's a meaningful problem here. You know, when you think about it, the basic fundamentals need to be met first. Their sense of security, their sense of safety. When we think about these entry-level employees, we're always talking about minimum wage, we're talking about lousy scheduling, we're talking about managers who are, in many cases, offer bonuses based on the percentage of labor to revenue, who are motivated to mess with the system as much as possible to improve their positioning. And that has huge impacts on the employees. I wish I could spend more of this entire presentation talking to it, but there's no time for that. But I will offer this to you. I will recommend this Good Jobs Institute, because this was another jewel and a gem that I came across that I had not seen before. This is one of those things that I went to a conference and I was like, wow. And the reason this was so interesting, it was an MIT professor, which always gets my attention, but it was research done based on discounters, the Costcos, the Aldis, the Quick Checks, and how they were able to achieve this kind of higher level self-actualized employees. And it's the simple stuff. But it's the stuff that we don't want to do or that we're not doing today. And it's an easy opportunity, a potentially easy opportunity to elevate the performance that we're seeing in the branches. If we set this context, the very next thing that we need to start thinking about then is how do you start to create an environment where you can actually get the kind of performance, the kind of engagement that you're looking for out of your employees. And for the sociologists, culture is a matter of artifacts, symbols. In the business enterprise environment today, there is no more powerful artifact than video. It is in this social media dominated world that high frequency access to short form video content is the way to change human behavior. I mean, think about it for a second. You know, if I were to ask, and I'm not asking for hands raised, but how many of you have tried to lose weight? Imagine for a second if your business success was dependent on your entire employee basis getting their BMI to a reasonable and rational level, and how difficult that would be. And now we're talking about, hey, we want employees that are going to be self-actualized, that are going to treat our customers in a way that they have not been treated before, that are going to excel and exceed their customer expectation. Changing human behavior is a very, very difficult thing. And so as we think through this, we're going to want a constant diet, a constant stream of engaging content to basically start helping them shift their understanding of who they are and what they're there for and why and how they are to serve their customers. This is happening across all industries. I am shocked. The one that woke me up the most to this was a barbecue shop. A barbecue shop is sending out 3-minute videos in the morning and in the evening every day so that their corporate leadership can have a direct communication with that frontline employee. That's what it takes to change a culture. You need these kinds of tools, these kinds of mechanisms in play. I would highlight this your bottom left thing here, because it was a LeadX is a leadership training app. And what was just really shocking to me is that it's 3-minute, 5-minute videos, and I'm sitting there and I'm going through several hours, not even noticing the time flies by. It's that same thing that happens every time you get on YouTube. You sit there and say, I'm just going to watch a 3-minute video, and 3 hours have gone by. 3 hours went by, and I was looking at leadership content 3 minutes, 5 minutes at a time. High frequency access. Play against aligning yourself with customer behavior rules. And this is how we change behavior. This is how we do the hard stuff of helping people lose weight in our enterprises. The next one I would move to is looking at the technology stack. It was really impressive to see Capital One and what they are doing from a technology perspective. And there's so much discussion about how technology is transforming industries, how it is the way to kind of move things forward, how everybody is in the technology, the restaurants, the retailers. You're not selling food, you're a technology company that happens to be delivering pizzas. Technology has a very powerful way of being able to enable a competitive differentiation. But the dilemma and the question I have to ask you is, what happens if you don't have 60 people to build this kind of technology stack? You can't sit there and say that, well, that's not us. We're not going to have 60 people to do what Capital One did. So then what's the alternative? And I think in these kind of situations, it is true. Technology is a very, very powerful and compelling mechanism to get a competitive advantage. You need to think about what plan B is. If you can't build the technologies, if you don't have the wherewithal, if you don't have the 60 FTEs, then we need to think real concretely about how do you get access to these technologies. And what I see happening in other industries is really fascinating. That there's so many, the bigger guys always have the 60 guys, and they're building stuff that is just elegant and beautiful and wonderful. But the rest of the guys, they're taking more of a standards play. If you look at the retail industry, if you look at the restaurant, the C-store, over 15 years ago when Amazon reared its ugly head, retail ran to digital. And in that moment, standards became very, very powerful. It became the way that allowed retailers to basically put in all these different disparate pieces together. You see the same thing happening in the C-store industry too as well. All these smaller players getting together and saying, let's get together and put standards together so that we can actually pull all these different solutions together. The restaurant industry this year launched standards bodies too as well. Let's do the same thing. We need the technology, we need the efforts. I think the banking industry, if I were to offer a prediction, in the next couple of years, it's the same thing that's going to evolve itself as well. As they mature and as we start to expand our use of technology and it becomes more and more mainstream, there will always be the Capital Ones who have 60 FTEs. But for everybody else, it'll be a standards play. It won't be about the novelty of the tech stack. It'll be getting a tech stack that is good enough, that does what it needs to do, and then the differentiation that you're looking for will be a competition based on execution. As we think about this, it's a technology as a service. I would like to ask one question, if you don't mind. How many of you today are using AI today in some kind of operational kind of component in your branches, in your back offices today? Can I have a raise of hands, please? How many of you today are doing something with AI that you couldn't do last year? When I think about AI, the most troubling thing that I think about is, to be honest with you, it's China. They are investing $70 billion into AI. They're making massive investments into seeking to dominate and become the world leader in AI. Not only that, even more disturbing than their investments, they've got all the data. In that culture, in that country, it's expected that you're going to give all your data, whether you're a consumer or a business, to the government to let them do all the AI. And we know in this day and age, data is the new oil. And so they have more money, and they have more data, and they're going to be doing far more things with AI. While for the US's perspective, we're not making these investments, and we're going the opposite direction. So there's something that's going to break at some point. We're going to need to fix this. But as we think about here, standing here in a banking conference, the question as it relates to AI is, what are you doing with it? And how are you developing it? You know, I'm a managed network service provider. We deal in the network, the security, the Wi-Fi, and even we are looking at AI. We're looking for very creative ways to say, how can AI change our business? We want to get to the point where we can take all these disparate data sources, correlate them, and start to anticipate problems before they happen. We want to anticipate outages before they actually interrupt services. These are the kinds of tools, new things that are possible and capable and functionally practical with AI. Think through these opportunities. Put them front, foremost, and center. My advice to you on this is, if you don't have the ability to go and hire a bunch of data scientists, that's fine. An easier way to get started on this is there are a gazillion AI startup companies hungry for the opportunity to leverage their skills in an enterprise context. It is very easy to get access to these guys, and it's a very easy way to dip your toe, to get started, and to do some small, simple things. That's what we did. We're not at the point where we can predict an outage before it happens and heal it and fix it, but we're getting there. We are at a point where we've spent the past 2 years cleaning up all our data, and it'll be these kinds of investments, these kinds of steps that you're going to need to take in order to unlock the potential later on. So it's okay not to have the abilities in-house. There's only so much that one can do. But it's not okay to say that because I don't have these in-house capabilities, I'm just not going to do anything, that is beyond my reach. Technology is here to stay. And we've got to figure out ways, if you don't have it in-house, then how do you get it so that you can still operationalize it for your functional use now? I will highlight this one, and I was very encouraged when Capital One came up here and talked about security. The first time I heard the S word used in a banking conference was actually at Future Branches East in the summertime. And it wasn't from a VP of IT, it wasn't from a CIO, it was from a CMO who was talking about the impact of a breach on their brand when it happened. And when I think about the Achilles heel of digital transformation, this is the one that is above far and foremost, ought to be on top of everybody's mind. There is so much at stake here. There is so much that you potentially could lose. I mean, think about it. The attacks happen on a continuous basis. If you're on the internet, you know you are being attacked. And at any moment when they get through, you lose everything, potentially. And it's very, very difficult to recover. And yet, what happens in so many of these cases, the leadership is illiterate when it comes to network security. They don't have a good feel for what do all these letters mean, and what do all these things, how much money do I really need to be spending on all this? I would suggest to you that these types of things, these kinds of services, are just as important as abiding by standard HR policies so that you don't get sued by your employees. Technical illiteracy in this topic is deadly. A functional understanding is mandatory. A competent understanding, to be able to understand at least the basics of what's going on and what is needed and what is required. And so my encouragement, my urgement to you is that you can do all the digital stuff you want. But like you heard from Capital One this morning, it's not going anywhere if you don't lock it down. If you don't have the security, the stakes are becoming higher and higher. It's remarkable when you think about it, because when you look at the banking industry from a network perspective, it's a very closed environment. It's been locked down since the beginning of times. Only now are you opening it up because you want all the fintech capabilities and all these other new novel services. And you're opening it up when the threats are the greatest. So my closing comment here is to think this one through. Technical illiteracy when it comes to topics like network security, it's unacceptable. It will hurt you. You will pay the price for that. You can't simply say that I've got an IT guy that's taking care of those decisions. No. You need to understand the fundamentals and understand, do I have enough? Because this is just a snapshot of where we are today. It continues to change. And someone needs to be asking the hard questions of, are my internal resources up to the job and able to actually meet the needs that are out there? these are my thoughts of the weak spots in digital transformation, and I would love to hear yours. And so I invite you to just connect with me so we can just continue this conversation. I would love to understand what is it that you're thinking about and what your ideas are. I hope I've shown you something that you have not already heard before. If I haven't, I would really like to talk to you because I'm sure there's something I could learn from you. Thank you very much.